Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the PE Effect, a webinar by Chokolaate in partnership with Milo Sri Lanka. Today, we will be discussing some very interesting points about the world of sports and the current situation of the country and the world. So, we have Malit Kumar Singha and our moderator for today, Chatushka D. Alvis, and we are expecting a surprise guest later on in the session. So before we start, I have a small message from our partner for today's webinar, Milo Sri Lanka.
අද දරුවන්ගේ ලෝකේ හරිම තරඟකාරී. වේගවත්. අපි හිතනවටත් වඩා. දුවට අරමුණු දිනා ගන්න. එයාගේම දක්ෂතාවය අභිබවා යන්න. දවස පටන් ගනිද්දිම අවශ්‍ය සමබර පෝෂණයට මයිලෝ දායක වෙන බව මේ අම්මනම් හොඳින්ම දන්නවා.
දරුවාගේ ප්‍රතිශක්තිය කරන පද්ධතිය මානසික ක්‍රියා සහ අස්ථි නිසි පරිදි පවත්වා ගැනීමට දායක වෙන විටමින් C යකඩ සහ කැල්සියම් අඩංගු මයිලෝ සමගින් පෝෂණයෙන් ඉදිරියට.
Good food, good life.
That was our partner for today, Milo Sri Lanka. Now, Milo has a few interesting things going on with today's webinar. Chatushka, would you like to elaborate on this?
Sure. Thank you, Parami. A very warm welcome, first of all, to our elite and eminent panelists. It's a privilege and pleasure to moderate this discussion on the PE effect, focusing on the importance of being physically active for youth and kids. Sports and physical education were disrupted due to the COVID-19 outbreak, and sports trainers, coaches, educators were compelled to integrate sports with technology and other means to navigate during these challenging times. But was it effective? Remains a question. Interestingly, we have distinguished personalities joining us today, sharing their perspectives, which we all look forward to. A very big shout out to our exclusive partner, Milo, for organizing this webinar. So as Parmi mentioned, we all love giveaways. 5 lucky winners will be selected and 5 valuable hampers will be gifted by Milo. Milo has sent a question to be asked, which is open to all the viewers and audience tuned in. All you need to do is comment your answers on the live stream. So the question is, name 3 nutrients that a mug of Milo is enriched with that supports your child to remain active. Let me repeat the question. Name 3 nutrients that a mug of Milo is enriched with that supports your child to remain active. So key in your answers and you will be one of the lucky winners. So before we commence this much anticipated webinar, there are a few ground rules that I wish to bring to your attention. For the audience that has tuned in, please post your questions in the comment section, and the questions will be read out to the panelists. If your question has already been answered during discussion, kindly refrain from reposting the question again. For our esteemed panelists, I shall be reading out the questions and giving each and every one of you the opportunity to share your perspective. There will be general questions directed to have the perspective of all 3 panelists, and simultaneously more specific questions directed to each one of you. There will be a time limit of 5 minutes allocated for answering each question. I would appreciate the adherence and cooperation towards the time. So introducing our panelists need no introduction, but for formalities, let me do the introductions. Mr. Malit Vikramakumar Singha, Principal Vichali International School, Gampha. Good evening, Malit. Thank you for joining this webinar.
Good evening, Chatushka, and good evening, everyone. It's nice to be back with Chokolaate after a while. And I think still we are in the month of January, so I'm going to wish everyone a happy new year, a very positive new year ahead. I think things are moving along well in the country, and we can look forward to a good year, I think.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Malik, go ahead.
No, just wanted to wish everyone a happy new year, and I would also like to thank Milo upfront for coming forward and promoting this program. So we can proceed, Chatushka.
Thank you very much, Malik. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. So we have 2 other elite and eminent personalities that are to join this webinar. and there is a special guest appearance as well. So let's stay tuned for that. But without delay, let's dive straight into the questions. My first question will be directed to Malit. In terms of school sports, Malit, it was a challenging time period. What were some of the measures that were undertaken by Wichely International to ensure that the athletes are kept active? They did not lose touch. They were able to maintain the same level of enthusiasm, intensity, and discipline. If you could share us your experience.
Okay. Interesting question, Chadushka. It was a very challenging period for all the schools and all the parents, I think, because COVID brought about a challenge dimension which we have never encountered before. Because there were so many restrictions and there were so many theories. For example, like there was a theory like you should not let your body temperature increase by doing sports. You shouldn't sweat too much, and you can catch COVID quickly. So these things got in the way as well. On top of that, there were restrictions in having schools open. So what eventually happened was parents were very reluctant to send out the children, even if the coaches were communicating that they were willing to do it with a lot of safety measures. So before I give you a direct answer to your question, I want to update all the viewers on a particular perspective of mine, so that there'll be a better understanding of the scenario. So what happened was, even prior to COVID, Chatushka, in our country, I mean, there were positive things building up and there were certain negative things building up. The positive things were in our country, you saw lots of, gymnasiums opening up in various parts of the country, jogging tracks coming up, people becoming more focused on, consuming salads and fruit and vegetables. So there was a bit of a good trend developing. Because people were reading the stuff through the internet and they saw certain elements on TV. But at the same time, from a teenager's point of view, lots of technology came in that kind of like sucked them in to becoming a bit unhealthy. Not to criticize any product or whatever, but I think stuff like game consoles and certain cable TV channels, Netflix, all this stuff got in the way, and kids started having chips and lagging behind couches, and there were even children who would cut school to watch a good movie on TV. That kind of a thing developed. So what happened was, during the COVID time, some of those bad practices kind of like evolved to the next level. I mean, parents were telling children not to go out. So what they did was, they were stuck in front of a computer during the schooling hours, and till the parents came home. In some of the homes where there was no supervision, what happened was, lots of children were in front of a TV or in playing a game console, and it did not work out well for most of the children, at least in Colombo. And what we did at Wichely was, on a positive note, we got our physical education teachers, the PE teachers, to make good PE videos, which were very practical, which can be done in about half an hour. And we sent them out through Google Classroom, and we ensured that the kids got some kind of a fitness going on. Also, we organized a few webinars where we got down people like Dr. Deepal Pereira and psychologist Miss Caldera, and we got them to educate our children and parents about the importance of doing physical activity and eating healthy. So those are the good things which we did. Of course, whether it was really, really effective, I cannot say, because we cannot monitor what happens at each home. But I always tell people, as an adult, you need to lead by example. Can I elaborate a bit more on that, Chatushka? So what I tell is, at a home, the father and the mother effectively becomes the role model for children. So as a parent, if you are eating healthy, if you are making a simple salad even at home, I mean, it doesn't take much for you to introduce some cucumber, some tomato and some salad leaves and make a healthy salad and squeeze in some lemon. I mean, it's not rocket science. You can do that in about 15 minutes. But people, when you talk about salads, think of very complicated things. But if you are eating the salads, having a clean glass of milk, eating healthy and clean, kids will follow you eventually. So if the parents get into a routine of, coming home late after work, ordering a kottu over Uber and a Coca-Cola, the kids will follow suit and follow the parent. Same way as a parent, if you have a very positive outlook, and if you are very fitness concerned, you probably wake up in the morning, do some cycling, do some jogging, and the kid sees you and they are bound to follow you. So there was genuine challenge during COVID where even certain adults were a bit worried to go out, or even if they had like a mini gym at home, they didn't want to work out. They felt, if I become fatigued and I go to office, I could catch COVID from someone. There were incorrect theories and assumptions made. So I think all of these kind of like, overall what I heard was there is a bit of a health issue now, at least in areas like Colombo, where people are a bit overweight. So that's my take on what probably happened during COVID. As virtually we tried, to do our best. Whether it was effective or not, we cannot verify as yet.
Very inspiring message, Malik, very inspiring message. And thank you for being open and honest in terms of your feedback. And we would also like to commend the school for the progressive steps undertaken during challenging times. So moving on to my next question, I'll have to direct it to you, Malik. My next question is in terms of skills and competencies, being a wholesome individual. Nowadays, you see more focus towards academics, which is required. But in your perspective, what are some of the skills and competencies a youth would acquire by participating and engaging in sports? It could be competitive athletes as well as recreational athletes. Does the skills acquired support in terms of employability and in the marketplace? Is my next question.
Very good question, Chatushka. I'm very glad you presented that question actually, because this will be something very important for parents to kind of like gather in today. I know lots of parents are incurring a heavy amount of money for their child's education. So they want the kids to get very good marks and do very well academically. And, all the universities are always, giving a high rating to a pupil who's coming in with the 3 A stars and so on. But having said that, Chatushka, if you look at the very successful people in life, they are people who did extracurricular activities and sports. That's the bottom line. So there is a lot of skill development, competency development happening when you are engaged with physical activity. For instance, I mean, if you are in a team, say be it cricket or rugby or badminton or whatever, inevitably you need to become a strategic thinker. For example, if you definitely become a captain or a vice captain of a game, you need to learn to think of strategy up front. I remember when I captained college badminton at St. Thomas's, it involved a lot of strategy. Sometimes, things will not work out. You learn to take, victory and defeat. So you learn to stomach it in. Okay. Also, you develop skills like communication. You need to communicate your strategy to your team members. If you can't give them the team goal and convince them of the plan and make it clear, you're going to lose. So as a part of, being involved with sports, you will develop leadership, communication. Okay. And also sometimes, you will have difficult team members. You need to market your strategy to very difficult team members. Sometimes just because you're the captain, when you communicate something, your teammates will not blindly agree with you. They will tell, captain, look here, this, I don't agree with you. I think we should do this way. Then, you need to market the strategy as well. So I think there's a lot of skill development happening and you become a bit more outgoing. I remember, Chatushka, till about grade 9 at college, I was very backward. But when I went for sports events, I had to talk with officials. I'll have to talk with the opposition captain during the toss. All these things, will kind of like get you introduced into society. You learn to socialize. Now, I'm so thankful I did sports back at college because I now have so many friends from Royal College, St. Anthony's, Richmond, so on. And those are lifelong connections what we have made. And you learn to handle pressure because a guy who does sports, once you enter the quarterfinal stage or whatever in a junior national, you are under the pressure pump. It's game on. And then, you learn to handle pressure. And that's life. In life, I always tell people from your birth till your death, you will encounter pressure. Some people, look for jobs without pressure. They want a family life without pressure, but pressure is going to be a part and parcel of life. When you do sports, you are that much better than others in handling pressure. So all these skills will, come into the picture the moment you are involved with sports. So it's not just leadership, communication, your marketing tactics to, team skills. If you're in a team game, you need to ensure, everyone gels well together. You have all kinds of people, positive thinkers, negative thinkers, the outgoing chaps, the energetic ones, the negative ones. So, you need to amalgamate all these people in order to win. So as a part and parcel of being involved with sports, inevitably you will develop skills and competences which will be very useful when you go into a university, when you go for a job, and even in daily life. You see that a lot of people who have done sports have a lot of mutual respect for one another. And even those soft skills and what you call the intra and interpersonal skills will develop too. You need to regulate. Now, for example, Chatushka, if you're in a court, you are playing a game of tennis, squash, or badminton, for example, unless you regulate your internal emotions, you can't focus on, a winning thing. If you get unwantedly angry with your opponent, you lose track of, the shuttlecock or the tennis ball, and then you can't play. So you learn to, understand yourself better and to regulate your own mind. All these things, the bottom line I want to tell Chatushka, will inevitably help with the academics as well. When you do a bit of physical activity, the oxygen intake will be better, your blood circulation will be better. So when you hang out with the guys or the girls and, you play a few games and you come back home, take a shower, you are ready for academics in a better way. So I always tell people, during my time at college, Chatushka, there were people who did sports till about 7 in the night. Okay. And the funny thing being, they did very well in the academics too. I mean, we had the Chari and Samantha Disarams, you had Jeevan Jayan Gunatilaka, Jason Jayasekara, Jeffari Dula Bandhan, Gihan Ranatungas, Naveen Samarasingers, some of my batchmates, they did very well in sports and academics. So the theory that some parents are having that, if a child is with books from morning till night will do well, I cannot agree. I always tell you need to have a very good balance to become a very good all-rounder. So I think giving that balance is something very important. And at this point of time, there was a Latin quote that used to circulate at college when we were, kids and playing games, which is mens sana in corpore sano, a healthy mind in a healthy body. I think that was the norm at college when we were there. So I think that really helped us to come up in life. So it's kind of like an unfortunate thing if a parent is thinking my child should be with books from morning till night. So I encourage all the parents, anyone in this audience, if you are putting pressure on your son or daughter by telling, you should be with books from morning till night, please don't do that. Kindly make sure that they get adequate physical activity, do sports, they develop the competencies which I mentioned here, so that, they will have a better future overall. So yeah, that's the answer in a nutshell, Chatushka.
It's a very engrossing and captivating response and feedback, Malik. We appreciate the valuable insight that you shared. Thank you again. So, right. So I will have to direct my next question to you as well. So Malik, in terms of during the period of COVID-19, there were restrictions imposed on sporting centers and gyms because of the outbreak, and there was limited access given to sporting centers and gyms. Has there been a change in your workout fitness routine in terms of sports, and how in terms of keeping yourself physically active, and how have you adjusted to it is my next question.
I think a lot of people had to make adjustments, Chatushka. I think one thing was, I think gymnasiums were pretty much shut for majority of the period. Only few gymnasiums eventually opened up later. And I think there were like so much of regulations which were involved, like a limited amount of, athletes can be inside the gym at one go. You have to use certain towels and certain sanitizers on the equipment that you are using. And there were so many, temperature measures and so on. So I think a lot of people were kind of like discouraged to go out and do fitness, but the few people who did fitness didn't give any excuses. They were able to, I think, remain at home. And, it's a matter of, you having a bit of, a few dumbbells at home and working out. So I think people did adjust and they tried their level best. But of course, it was very challenging when the gyms are shut, because ultimately your mind matters. So what happens is, Chatushka, in reality, why people go to a gym is not that you can't work out from home. I mean, you can go to a place like SR Marketing or whatever, and you buy a few dumbbells, and you can work out at home. You can go to the beach, do a run. Okay, you can do planks at home. You can. All you need is a mat, and you can create your own weights. When we were schooling, Chatushka, we even made weights using sand-filled bottles. Okay, we were doing stuff like that too. So if you are giving excuses, there'll be plenty of excuses. But the people who didn't give excuses did manage to work out at home, in the safety of their home, and ensure that fitness did go on. But of course, what will happen in reality being, why we go to a gym practically is because the human nature is, we are social creatures. So we like to go to a gym, and we get inspired when we see another fit bodied person doing a bit of running on a treadmill, pumping the iron. So when we see that there's a bit of a crowd, the instructor would basically walk up to you and ask how you are, and help you with that. So that element was severely missing during COVID. It's very little people who have that intrinsic motivation. I mean, top end athletes would have that, Chatushka. I mean, you take a guy like, say, Chamindavas, or a Julian Bolling would have that intrinsic motivation to work out at home and to go to the highest level, because they are high level athletes. They would do that. But then again, in common, what would happen is, if the gyms get shut down and the fitness trainers aren't available out there, lots of people would be lagging behind at home, giving excuses for not working out. But I believe you need to find that motivation. End of the day, this COVID wave can last on for years. I saw that in Singapore, I think the Prime Minister mentioned they need to brace themselves for about another 4 years. So who knows, maybe this might last for another 2-3 years. You need to find a way at home to do fitness. All you need is a few square feet of space. You can actually, wake up in the morning, have a nice glass of hot water, and then, work it out and be fairly fit, even if you can't have access to a gym. So I think people need to really change their frame of mind and be positive about it. And rather than worrying about the restrictions which are out there, which might not go out for a while, in fact.
Very pragmatic perspective, Malik, that you shared. Thank you so much again for the feedback and insight that you shared. So I've just got an update that we're still awaiting the two distinguished panelists to join in. So until that, I have one more question for you, Malik. In terms of PE, in terms of physical education, is the school planning on any sort of crafts to promote PE in terms of programs and motivation? So do you reckon once PE starts again physically, you would be able to attract the same enthusiasm from kids? Is my next question.
Very good question, Chatushka. And I think still we haven't got an official green light that we can recommend sports. I didn't see it anywhere. They have told that we can bring in the grade 11s. So we are bringing the grade 11s in. But then again, whether we can do sports for them or PE, they haven't given a green light. And I think roughly the government is targeting to reopen for other grades by around the 15th of February. But there is no official message to schools as yet that we can recommence in sports. But what we will do is, like, at least from my end, at which I'm planning to have do what you call a reinvention or a relaunching of sports, because I'm sure when these kids come back, some of them will be worried to do sports, because there are so many theories. Of course, whether these theories have been proven or not, I'm not sure. Like I told you about the sweating, and if your body temperature is high, that you will end up getting COVID. So there are concerns like that out there in the world. But I am hoping to kind of like relaunch sports. In fact, I have already hired a very two very good coaches to help me out with this physical education relaunching. And I think it's very important to get the little children involved with physical activity, Chatushka. I think one of the key points being, it's all about habit. Life is about habits. If you instill a little habit in a little child early in their life, about physical fitness, about eating healthy, about cutting down on the salt intake and the sugar intake early in their life, I think that's where the key is. So, because like I remember when we were schooling, the difference between the good sporty guys and the others was like the internal commitment. We were educated upfront. You need to drop the fizzy drinks. So I remember even in a home dinner, if the fizzy drinks were available, we did not go to have them. We were able to, kind of like have the self-control, because we were given a proper, what you call a knowledge about those things. So I hope to kind of like amalgamate knowledge about healthy eating as well, because that's going to be essential. If you are going to consume fizzy drinks while you're doing what you call physical fitness, it's not going to work out. So my plan is, soon after COVID, let them settle in the classroom for about 3 weeks. And once we get a green light from the government that we can proceed with the sports, definitely the normal PE timetable curriculum. Virtually every grade in our school, Chatushka, has PE embedded to the curriculum. I'm a firm believer. Sometimes the O-level, A-level kids, to be frank, doesn't like it, because they've become very book oriented. So if you have PE after about 12 o'clock, you see them trying to cut it. But I do my rounds and I inevitably grab them from the class and push them into the basketball court, go play for a while, hoping to get back on that same track, and also to do some promotions. I think little children, we need to kind of like somehow promote it to them, because we need to overcome their indulgence with the game consoles and so on. I think the last 10-month period, they have kind of like got a bit attached to these games. So it'll be a tough task, but hoping to reinvent and relaunch sports and PE soon as we get the green light.
Very visionary perspective, Malik. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. So we will now go for a quick commercial. Parami?
අද දරුවන්ගේ ලෝකේ හරිම තරඟකාරී. වේගවත්. අපි හිතනවටත් වඩා. දුවට අරමුණු දිනා ගන්න. එයාගේම දක්ෂතාවය අභිබවා යන්න. දවස පටන් ගනිද්දිම අවශ්‍ය සමබර පෝෂණයට මයිලෝ දායක වෙන බව මේ අම්ම නම් හොඳින්ම දන්නවා.
දරුවාගේ ප්‍රතිශක්තිය කරන පද්ධතිය මානසික ක්‍රියා සහ අස්ථි නිසි පරිදි පවත්වා ගැනීමට දායක වෙන විටමින් C යකඩ සහ කැල්සියම් අඩංගු මයිලෝ සමගින් පෝෂණයෙන් ඉදිරියට.
Good food, good life.
Thank you, Parami. So a big shout out again to our exclusive partner Milo for organizing this webinar. So we have a giveaway. So 5 lucky winners will be selected and 5 valuable hampers will be gifted by Milo. So I'll read out the question again. All you need to do is comment your answers on the live stream. So the question is, name 3 nutrients that a mug of Milo is enriched with that supports your child to remain active. Let me repeat the question. Name 3 nutrients that a mug of Milo is enriched with that supports your child to remain active. So all you need to do is key in your answers and hopefully you'll be one of the lucky winners. And I've just been told that we have one of our distinguished personalities joining the webinar right now, Mr. Julian Bolling. Hi, Julian. A very warm welcome to you. Julian, you're on mute. Until Julian sets up, just a quick intro of Julian. He's a well-known swimmer that represented Sri Lanka in many international competitions, including the Olympic Games, and the director of Rainbow Academy. So we are privileged to have Julian with us. Julian, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Julian. Welcome
Sorry,
aboard.
guys. Happy to be here, but I really apologize for being late. Something
Perfectly.
my mother always said, never be late. But gosh, she's not going to be a proud mother today.
Pleasure to have you. If I may direct, we've had a round of questions, and if I may direct the next question to you, Julian. So since we are on the topic of physical education, we need to also consider that safety is of utmost priority at present, given the COVID-19 outbreak. I would like to ask you in terms of some of the safety measures that were undertaken by the swimming club or the academy. And my question is twofold. In terms of swimming, it's a sport which is more challenging to integrate with technology and deliver a training program with the necessity of having a pool facility. How did you navigate during these challenging times?
Well, I think the best example is not us, but the rugby fans will know how Argentina, Chatushka, how the Argentinian rugby team, they beat New Zealand playing them in Australia the other day for the very first time. And if you look at the whole the months leading to that game, they were on lockdown in Argentina. And there is this little video that went viral, which is fantastic, that shows how these players were practicing in their apartments, trying to face the All Blacks. Can you imagine that? A team that hasn't even beaten the All Blacks in the entire history. They play good rugby. Everybody knows that. And then they didn't have any domestic rugby. It's always good to get a domestic, some involvement in rugby before you represent, we say your country in some international event. And here they had no domestic rugby. They practice on their own most of the time. And then they go to Australia, and for 2 weeks they were on quarantine, where they only had Zoom sessions from their rooms. They couldn't even get out of the rooms, like what we have with the, how foreigners, when they come to Sri Lanka. So they're kept in a hotel for 2 weeks in a room. So they went through the same thing. And then they go and play the All Blacks and they beat them. This is just like incredible. That it's not supposed to happen. And it's amazing that if we pause and ponder what happens here, sometimes when you're pushed against the wall or challenges come your way through those adversities, you can end up performing even better. So I had a similar challenge when I was small. I dropped a weight on my toe. I had 7 stitches at about a month to go for the nationals, and I just did loads of dry land on a pulley machine. That's all I did. And 2 days before the meet, I got in and still with the damaged toe, swam, and I was able to do well. So what we challenge our kids is that, look, during swimming, when we practice a lot in swimming, we don't have much time for what we call the dry land side of things. Ideally, if we had more time for it, kids, especially student athletes, they're severely curtailed with their time because of schooling and transportation, etc. So what we got them to do was to work on those dry land aspects and do something which they haven't done before. So we feel a lot of our athletes have come out stronger now, but for sure we missed out on the swimming. So that's an example of what we did with our athletes. And then latterly, with the pools closed, even now we know the gyms have been open. For the last 3 months, our pools are closed. We started going to the ocean. Every morning we were out there in the ocean, putting safety first, not with the COVID only. The ocean has its own elements. But on a given morning, this morning, I think kids swam about 10 kilometers. Some of the seniors, some of the juniors swam less. So we always look for other avenues to and I think the similar thing would have happened with studies today, how all schools have gone into online, studies. So it's never to complain saying, hey, my facility is not open, I can't do this sport. We got to find ways to improvise.
Inspiring perspective, Julian. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is in terms of technique. I know swimming requires a lot of technique as well. The importance of following the right technique when engaging in sports, Julian.
I think they call it technique. There's a fancy name they use called biomechanics. Obviously, the old-fashioned word is technique. It's still a good word to use because children understand when you say technique. And every sport has some to some level different types of techniques they have to try and master and try and progress. And swimming, we are challenged with a situation where in water it's if I get this right, I think it's 1,000 times more dense than air. So when we swim through water, if you improve a unit of speed, you gain 4 units of resistance. So for us in swimming, it's about trying to cut through the water and try and create less resistance, which is an interesting situation. So one thing we do, which I learned at a workshop that I attended in Delhi by one of the American greats in coaching, and he says how he uses the phone as his tool for coaching. And there's you film the kids while they're training with the phone, and you replay the technique to them from different angles, because also when the kid knows we are filming them, they might actually try to swim nicely, but we surprise them on their regular laps. It's almost like on a daily basis, we will want the coaches to film 1 or 2 kids and try and give them some feedback, etc., without waiting for a different time to try and work on technique. We try to do that during training.
Thank you, Julian, for sharing that. Just talking in terms of nutrition, talking in terms of good nourishment, how to stay active at home while having good nourishment. It's important to have a balanced diet. It's important to eat on time, keep yourself hydrated. What is the importance of taking nutritional meals when engaging in sports?
100%. Now I'm part of the National Sports Council. We just launched our Tier 1 athletes, about 50 of them who are medal prospect athletes for the Asian and Commonwealth Games. So we met up with the sports ministry medical staff, and we discussed on nutrition, because this is absolutely important that they eat. It depends on the sport. So every sport, I think your requirement is different. Within a sport, you can have a sprinting event, and like in swimming or running, you can have a sprinting event and a distance event. Their training might be different. So the distance swimmers might need more carbs. So you can go down to specifics like that. But what we notice in swimming is, I have a good example. We had a boy called Akalanka. I think he won a silver at South Asian Games. But he for the Asian age group meet, he actually won gold. We are quite happy about it. His times are quite fast. And this is a kid with his A-levels, and he studies that we were able to sort of handle both his academics and his sport. And when he came back, I was so surprised with the speed that he swam, more than just the medal. I asked him, Akalanka, are you sort of taking any type of supplements? This new thing is the trend is to take on supplements, and and he said, sir, mama supplement නෙමෙයි sir, මම vitamin එකක්වත් ගන්න. So what? And then I sort of looked into his food, and what he had? He was having a kilo of food that his mother has made, pretty decent food. Nothing sort of advised by a nutritionist, but he had a kilo for breakfast. After training, he has a kilo at 10:30 during the interval. He has a kilo for lunch, and he has a kilo for dinner. 4 kilos. That's one example. 2 is, I was at the Commonwealth Games, and I was seated with the weightlifting coach. And weightlifters are power lifters. They're big. They eat a lot. They got to maintain a certain weight probably to compete in a certain weight category. So they have to be a little more sensitive, careful about that. But they eat a lot because it's all to do with strength. And Vikramasinghe, the coach, said how, because on that Commonwealth we had the two Abesinghe brothers, Matthew Abesinghe, Kyle, there's Akalanka who I mentioned, and Charanta, and he said, Julian, me wage lamai ape lifters wada kana. Wage lamai. And I have actually seen these 4 athletes eat like horses. So what we do is we measure. Now, the other day, there was a boy from Panaduru who swims with us, and we looked at his food. He was eating 500 grams in a meal. We just pushed it up to 750 and 4 meals a day. We're going to keep a tab. If it goes wrong, so I think what Sri Lanka is lacking is a lot of strength, a lot of size compared to the Western side and the Eastern side of, So basic food, I believe, is more important, the volume, and then try and put the nutrients right. Because you can have a fancy, meal with all the right nutrients, but if you don't have the right volume, the calories, then I think all is lost. So we are trying to put the eating habits to come first, and then look into. But what the sports ministry now wants to do is they want to study each sport and figure out what the right food is for each sport, and then try and educate those particular sports through their national federations and educate the coaches on basic diet. So that's in the pipeline for sure. Something we lack in Sri Lanka is that, and yeah. Sorry, it took a little bit of time, but I gave all those little stories. So, some of it is not science, some of it is just through feel. But yeah, it does work.
Thank you for sharing that holistic perspective that really added in terms of your response.
And have a Milo maybe after each meal.
Of course. My next question, I'd like to move on to Malit. Malit, there could be certain limitations in sports activities when you practice sports at home during the period of COVID-19. There could be restrictions in a proper environment. The kids or youth could be living in apartments with no access to a garden area. So there could be certain limitations. How can home be the home ground with the possible limitations? How do you inspire athletes to be active at home would be my question to you.
In terms of what we have been doing at Virtually concerning this Chatushka, we have been sending them videos done by our own PE teachers. So these are the teachers that they used to see day in and day out. So I think when you see people whom you know, whom you can relate to, the ability to inspire them would be far more greater, because there's a lot of respect amongst children for the PE teachers whom they know during the schooling hours. So we have been giving them the opportunity to send videos directly to each grade based on their physical development, because the kind of fitness you would do for a grade 3 child and a grade 8 child is very contrastingly different. Also, I think when you were talking with Julian, you touched on technique and nutrition. So same way, we have been getting the PE teachers to, demo the way a stretching should be done, a warm down should be done, because I think Julian can add more to what I'm saying later on. If you don't have the right so-called technique, even in a warm-up or a warm-down, that could be, the pathway to an injury, a big injury. Lots of people, I've seen lots of kids after a match or a game without warming down, they just go off like that, and then lactic gets accumulated in your muscles, and then there is the background for a muscle tear due to muscle rigidity. So I think all these things we have been telling our PE instructors to kindly give attention to detail and do. In terms of home, I feel like home inspiration should come from parents. I think any coach doing any game would tell during a COVID period, lots of children are at home. So parents need to take the leadership role and, look into that. If a parent is, only asking about book work, then that's not the way forward. a father or a mother after work, when they come back, they can always ask, Puta, did you do a bit of fitness today? Or were you seated for long hours? When you're seated for a long time in the same posture, looking at the computer monitor from 7:30 to 1:30, again, that could make you very lethargic, very unhealthy. So it's very important that, parents, it's good for the parents too. I mean, if a parent is, like in their 30s, 40s or 50s, they need to get some fitness. So they can ask their son or daughter, how about we go to the rooftop and do, like I told, even in the hall, in your own home, you can get a mat, okay, and do some fitness. And if a parent is struggling with finding time for that, they can actually switch on a fitness video on YouTube. There are enough and more inspirational characters in both in our local country as well as in foreign countries. You show them how a guy like Michael Jordan used to work out, or Brian Lara, or even Julian, for example. Julian is one person that I used to really admire, watching, really. I remember when we were schooling, we used to watch Julian go for the Asian Games, and we used to think, okay, I need to be like this guy. So I think we have enough and more people. It's just that, parents need to remind, look at these individuals, try to reach the highest level. Uh, what the biggest concern for me, Chatushka, now compared to the schooling era of, our time and now is, there is a situation, children are kind of like content with doing sports to a limited level. I think Julian might have encountered, even swimmers. They just want to be in their college team, and they're very happy if they're in the group photo. Okay, there aren't the guys who want to go to national level, international level, and perform well. So it's very important that we give them enough inspiration, that parents do tell them the value. Look here, if you get qualified to be in the Sri Lanka junior pool, it's good someday when you're going for a university, when you are going for a job. They'll know that you have developed the competencies which we spoke of before, by doing sports, and you've done at the highest level, and you get better recognition too. So I think, considering all these factors, the home leaders, the father and the mother, needs to motivate the child. Look here, fitness is important. It's a way of living. Fitness should be, like brushing your teeth, eating. It should be embedded into the daily practice in your life. I think if that's been done, and inspiration is given by father, mother, the coaches, the school environment really does matter. The leadership matter. You need the school principals to, get actively involved in sports. There were times, Chatushka, in the past, like, in the around 2015, 2016, when I had more time, I sometimes used to go to grounds, badminton courts, the swimming pool, inspire the coach, inspire the kids. You need to have physical presence. You can't be doing, warming your chair in your office and expect, people to get inspired. You need to be out there in the field and inspire people. So I think people like Julian and people like Vas, they can play a big role. And inspire, as well as there's enough and more content basically online if you want to inspire. So parents can do fitness with the children. I feel, as a bottom line, Chatushka, if the father and the mother can inspire the children at home, there's no bigger inspiration than that.
Very good thoughts, Malik. Very interesting thoughts. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is in terms of sports knowledge and awareness sessions. Have there been any sporting quizzes, knowledge awareness sessions that have been conducted by Vigil International? And could you provide a relatable example as well in terms of experience?
At the moment, Chatushka, we haven't gone up to that extent, but it is a part of the gradual development to have such programs. So what happens is, like, at the moment, in this country, we have a situation where parents are afraid to send out their children, even for academic work. So it's only very recently that schools reopened for children. So the plan is for them to come in, and then gradually, we can get them focused on sports, because right now, what you call the potential for having online sports kind of like promotional programs will not work out, because children are engrossed with academic work. online. So that has been kind of like the norm, and very little individuals have tried to, in our country, to get kids involved with sports through online means. I think we are at infancy, I would say. But like what Julian mentioned, there are in other countries big programs coming through. Right now, a big concern of the parents is, will my son or daughter be ready for the exams coming up in March and May? Okay, so even if we try to do too much of promotion concerning sports right now, that will not work. So what I feel is, let the kids gradually come back to school, and then we can then encourage them to do more sports, and also then gradually we can embed the blended learning method for sports as well. I feel the blended learning approach in education can be kind of like eventually transformed into sports arena as well. I think that's where the sports ministry should try to focus as well, probably, because sometimes you might not have access beyond COVID. Even Chatushka, there can be situations where outstation boy or girl cannot come to Colombo and have access to a very good coach or a very good facility. But even for that child, we can reach out to them through internet, have this blended learning approach, and say, imagine a person like Julian talking to a outstation boy, say in Hambantota, and that kind of approach we can have. So right now, I would say we can't make the promotion of sports too heavy on the internet. We need to win over the parents too. I mean, it's a huge tussle. I mean, parents are heavily focused on educational achievement. To be fair enough, education is very costly today. Okay, it's running into a couple of millions. If you look at a child's school fees from grade 1 to grade 12, that's a very hefty amount. Then when they go to a university or a master's, that's another couple of millions. So we need to find middle path, but gradually what I would say, the dream for me as an educator would be, Chatushka, like what we had in the 90s, have a scenario where kids are doing very well in academics and very well in sports as well. That can be achieved. We've seen people do like that. I mean, there are very successful people who have done sports but yet did the academics as well. So we need to find the middle ground. But right now, I would say parents are scared. So we need to convince them that things are safe, and gradually only we should promote. Because if not, if we try to kind of like forcefully market something online, that will not work out. So my plan is gradually let them come back, do a bit of sports. If we have another COVID wave, by that time we would have sufficiently inspired children, and then have the blended learning approach, coming into sports as well. So that's the idea in the long term. Because in case, Chatushka, I don't know, I've heard, maybe I'm going a bit out of scope, maybe there are better experts than me. I've heard in 2025, there's going to be a world food shortage. There's a forecast like that, as well as there's another theory that COVID is only like the stepping stone for a viral culture. In the future, they say that viruses beyond COVID will come into play. So we definitely need to already create an environment where we can continue with sports by online means as well. So it's a very good topic to discuss today.
Thank you, Malik, for the pragmatic perspective that you shared. Very much appreciate the insight and feedback. Moving on to my next question, I'd like to direct it to Julian. In terms of time, if you were to allocate time or give a set time, what would you reckon as the standard for kids? How much time would a kid how much of time should a kid spend related to physical activities?
Good point. Something, because I'm involved in the National Sports Council and we're trying to see something. I feel what was lacking in Sri Lankan sport is what in the education ministry. I'm not a fan of the A-level exam or the system, but if you look at the A-level exam, as Malik quite rightly said, it's very expensive. If you drive through any town in Sri Lanka, now you don't see posters of tuition masters, you see hoardings. The competition is huge. But what has happened here is that what I saw, the example here in the A-level structure is that the calendar is set, the rewards are very consistent, and there is transparency. No minister can put their kid into campus. If you look at the normal, getting into the local campus situation. In sport, we have all three missing. So that's what we are trying to put right now. Put the calendar right. Let the kids know what the future holds. So much so that even now, knowing that there is going to be a sure roadmap for what you call the high performance kids, and this high performance is another. I think it also can bring problems into society. If you may allow me to touch on it later, there is time. How it has, society in America, communities are collapsing because of sports. So as much as they are performing well, there are other issues. So but to get to this, your question of how many hours. So we looked at a long-term plan development for an athlete. So we looked at the South African, the Canadian, and the Australian model, which are pretty much consistent. We are looking at a 10-year plan for a child to kind of perform at the highest level. And there is a golden rule. Malik might be able to explain it better even, but I only just heard about it. It's called the 10,000 hour rule. You might have to go through 10,000 hours of training before you can reach a certain standard. Now, obviously, how does a 13-year-old and a 23-year-old, train? We have a small benchmark that we use as the optimal level of sessions a week. So we take the child's age and divide it by 2. So if there's a 12-year-old, we say, look, you can do about 6 sessions of sport a week, not more than that. If you're 13, you can go 6 in 1 week, 7 in the other. So it's not written anywhere or anything that we sort of, we done a little bit of research, but we brought this basic yardstick to, so a 16-year-old might be training about 8 sessions a week, if they can handle it with the academics. So, and then the number of hours, we are a bit technical. That information is there in the internet. A 12-year-old might want to train about an hour and a half a day. Our seniors in a session, we are looking at about 20 hours. 20 hours for a senior A-level student if they have time for it with the academics, or a school leaver who's full-time into sport, about 20 hours in our sport. And sport to sport, that can change. I heard in synchronized swimming, the world-class synchronized athletes, females, well, now it's also males, I think, they practice 8 hours a day. Now, swimming, you won't be able to physically practice 8 hours a day. So it depends on the sport, and there's lots of information. You can always go into the net and find out what certain countries practice and get that information. But it should be progressive. But something we do is we put a cap and say nothing more than that. But if the child says, look, they want to achieve something less, and this comes to in our sport, what we do with children now is we ask children, what is it? What's your goal? What's your dream? And I think some kids dream big, some kids dream small. The dreams can evolve as time goes along, but we are available for kids. So we ask kids, what is it that you want to achieve out of swimming? And it's amazing how kids come with little goals like, oh, I want to get into my school relay team, or I want to get through the novices meet, or I want to break a national record. All those things they haven't achieved yet. Then we make a plan for it and say, look, how fast would you have to swim? How many hours of training would you might have to do? So we make a discussion with the child in making their plan. And then we get the parent to come along and say, look, this is the child's dream. Can the parent and the coach sort of support the child to achieve, his or her dream? So we don't try to go beyond a certain level, but if the child feels they want to swim, train 3 times a week, because not everybody is tuned to wanting to train full time. Like in academics, I say there are, well, this is what happened. I think in all of us in school, you have the A student, the B grade student, the C, and the other day I was on television somewhere and I said there's a D level, which can be some of us in class. But the beauty is the teacher loves all of them in there. And he caters to all, but will teach probably at the highest level, but permits the D students to hang around, and as long as they don't disturb the class and have play too many pranks. So it's a nice mix, and the fact that we got to bring the joy of sport. Children have an intrinsic reason for wanting to do sport, and that is to have fun. That's the big reason. They might not even realize. Unfortunately, us adults, the parents, and us coaches, what are we trying to do? A competitive parent or a coach is trying to become the best, coach or the best well, let's say the best parent, the parent with the best child. So then we use the child for our benefit. That becomes an extrinsic target. And this is one critical factor that we have to address with parents. Like you all quite rightly said, parents have a massive role to play. So here's the example. I give a little story. I was at Vattal Lyceum, and then I had a chat with the parents early in the morning, spoke about things, and then at 10:30 the kids came, and I spoke to about 50 kids. And in one point I asked them, how many of your parents talk about the sport while they drive back home after a competition or even after training? How many of your parents? But I touched based on that with the parents, but here I researched and asked these kids how many, and every child put their hand up. And then I said, how many of you really want your parents to stop this? And those hands stayed up. Not one came down. So if you look at it, what happens is the parents, and maybe even us coaches, want to try and achieve something through this child who is very innocent. And so we are studying a course called 3-dimensional coaching, which teaches, not only the first dimension of sport is the physical. We talked about it, biomechanics or techniques and your strength and your diet. Then there's a bit of psychology involved. But the third dimension, psychology is the second dimension. The third is we call the relational, the heart values, the goodness of the individuals, to make them good leaders. So are we intentional about all that while we handle these kids? So in doing this course, it comes to light, all this that I've been sort of talking has come through that training to make me realize that I cannot go into a transaction with a child. Hey, if you swim fast, I'll do this for you. Or you do this for me, I'll make you swim fast. It becomes a transaction. I want to be a transformational coach who's saying, you know what, I will help you to achieve those targets of yours, but my primary target is to help you to be a better human being. And then there are these trainings to, how do you apply that on the field, off the field? Interesting times. So I think we have to, especially with school kids, Malit, I think, the bigger schools have bigger competition, bigger shields they want to achieve, and all these parents. And I know a certain program, I can't divulge the information, but it's a 40 million, 30 million rupee program to win that one particular shield. And one boy that actually during the season stayed with me at home, who doesn't have a father in his life, we found out that these kids are training so hard to bring the trophy home. This is a leading school, not too far from your school, Malik, down Bullers Road. So, they don't attend class. They don't attend class. So what happens is the rich kids, the rich parents' kids, they can play that sport, bring the trophy home. The adults are happy because they're spending 30 million. They're under pressure to keep the sponsors happy. And, the child might end up going to Australia, right? The rich kids. What happens to the poor kid? And I noticed this kid was thrown out on the streets. After, a month later was A-level. He failed, obviously. I called the committee and I told them, and told them off actually. So that's child abuse. And I keep looking at myself, how I'm coaching. Am I also in the same thing? I might not have 40 million bucks that I invest on a child, but with the words I speak to children, am I, sort of using them, motivate them to achieve my goals versus putting the child first? So these are the things that we are now discussing, and we are very intentional about saying sports has to change, because the greatest success story in sporting world now is, and the minister is trying to push it, Honorable Minister of Sport, which some of us are against, is e-sport. E-sport has been created because it's an alternative to physical sport. And it creates an environment where children are happier there than being on the sporting field. But the side effects it has, and problems it brings along. So we have huge issues, and if we don't sit down and talk about this, I think the degradation of society in this sense is collapsing.
Thank you, Julian, for that inspirational and motivational thoughts and feedback that you shared. We'll now go for a quick commercial. Palmi, if you're ready.
අද දරුවන්ගේ ලෝකේ හරිම තරඟකාරී. වේගවත්. අපි හිතනවටත් වඩා. දුවට අරමුණු දිනා ගන්න. එයාගේම දක්ෂතාවය අභිබවා යන්න. දවස පටන් ගනිද්දීම අවශ්‍ය සමබර පෝෂණයට මයිලෝ දායක වෙන බව මේ අම්මනම් හොඳින්ම දන්නවා.
දරුවාගේ ප්‍රතිශක්තිය කරන පද්ධතිය මානසික ක්‍රියා සහ අස්ථි නිසි පරිදි පවත්වා ගැනීමට දායක වෙන විටමින් C යකඩ සහ කැල්සියම් අඩංගු මයිලෝ සමගින් පෝෂණයෙන් ඉදිරියට.
Good food, good life.
So to all viewers tuned in, we all love giveaways. So 5 lucky winners will be selected and 5 valuable hampers will be given by Milo. So Milo has sent a question to be asked, which is open to all viewers and audience tuned in. All you need to do is comment your answers on the live stream. Name 3 nutrients that a mug of Milo is enriched with that supports your child to remain active. I'll repeat the same question. Name 3 nutrients that a mug of Milo is enriched with that supports your child to remain active. So do key in your answers and have an opportunity to win 5 lucky hampers. So before we conclude, I would like to thank Malik and Julian for the time that they allocated for sharing valuable insight with us. So in conclusion, what would be your concluding remarks? Any advice that you would like to share on the areas of kids being inspired to be physically active, regardless of whether they're at home or whether they're at school? Malik, over to you.
Yes, Chatushka. In conclusion, I would like to say something which Julian already touched on. Bottom line is the child should be happy. Sports should be done to create joy. It should not be made into a, what you call, how should I put this? It should not become a vessel for the parents to achieve what they couldn't achieve in their life. Neither it should be done in a manner where they are trying to fulfill their ego. As long as, the sports are being used for a good purpose to keep the child healthy and happy, I think as an educator, I would be pretty much happy. But I would also encourage, life is all about experiences, Chatushka. If a child can go the distance, if you see that my son or daughter has the potential to go for Asian Games, has the ability to go that one extra mile that another child cannot, as a parent, you can detect that in your child. There's no better judge of a child than a father or mother. So if they do find that in their child there's that innate ability to go the extra mile, I think they need to reach out to the professionals and work with a proper vision, a mission, and with proper objectives, and to get their child to reach those great heights, so that the child will have a tremendous experience. I think Julian will add how he would have felt at his first Olympic Games and Asian Games when he went out there. Those are experiences which a human being should try to strive for. So if someone can go that extra mile, we should help out those young people to go the extra mile. But it shouldn't be done in a manner where it's not for everyone. Every child can't go for the Olympics, every single child can't go for the Asian Games, and parents shouldn't get into a mentality, okay, my son is or daughter is second grade because he cannot go the extra mile like my neighbor's child. It should not boil down to that. So I really hope people will do sports to keep their body and mind healthy and happy. And I think as educators, if we can really encourage that to happen, we'll have a very healthy and fit and happy society. So that's my closing remark. I really hope that in 2021 Sri Lankan parents will think about those things and try to ensure that their kids get the best out of life. So that's my rounding up of the session.
Thank you very much, Malik. Over to you, Julian.
Maybe something a little different. I just came to mind is a little experience I had in 1984, many years ago. Was the first South Asian Games, and it was held in Nepal, and I was the overall captain of all the sports. So which means I was gonna, probably the only job you're given is to carry the flag during the opening ceremony, which I was looking forward to. And you know, if you're given the chance. But then the government said, the authorities said that every athlete has to pay for their air ticket, but they will be paying for our accommodation. And even though we were living in Colombo, we were not, a situation where we could afford it. And something I told mom and dad was, I had two older brothers, and I said, you know what? And this is the first SAF game, so it's a big deal. I said, you know what? I'm not going on this tour. You have two elder sons who might have to save some money for their education. I'm going to stay back. And the best thing, it's just amazing what I heard after that was mom and dad both said, you know what? It's okay, you can stay back. Not it's okay, you can go, we will find the money. I'm sure they could have found the money. And I'm just glad that, those are the experiences that I sort of value more than if I did win, something, made a name for myself, which is not my doing. Is those experiences, the relationships I built within the family, we had a decent, these types of things built better bonding between us. I made a lot of friends while journeying, and if I had achieved everything and been, mentally extremely strong and, all those other attributes, versus I look back at my sporting career, and I think the most enjoyable thing is all the different friends I met. The coaches, the teammates at different teams that I swam with. And I appreciate relationships. And this is, I think, very, very important, that we create, relationships, and that's what lasts. Even today, when we meet as, my schoolmates, we only talk about the good days at school. So, like Malik said, the joy, the happiness is extremely important, in spite of, you going for these targets. And today I read an article that the best of swimmers in the world, they've done a research and they found out that the bigger reason they did sport was because they were enjoying it. And their parents are not as pushy, but the parents are supportive. There's a bit of thunder and lightning, so I hope you all can hear me. And
yes, we can hear you, Julian.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julian, for your concluding remarks. So, in conclusion, I am extremely thankful to the panelists for sharing valuable insight on the PE effect and for the time that they had allocated. On behalf of Chokolaate, we would like to wish you all the very best in your future endeavors. Do keep in touch. And I would also like to thank the viewers that had tuned in. I'm Chatushka Diavis, signing off from Chokolaate. Have a great rest of the evening. Thank you.